Wonderful. Okay, we are going to dive right in. We have, I think, about a quorum of folks joined. So thank you guys, everyone. We have a good group on here. I think it's a mixture of current customers, current partners, few prospects. So we'll be talking to a lot of different perspectives. But I am so excited to finally get to do another one of these release parties with, I think, our most exciting features that we have delivered since I've been part of the Validator team. And so we are really excited about this. It is our final release of 2023, coming about 2 weeks late, but better late than never. And it is really incredible what I think we're about to show you guys, and hopefully you guys can get part of this in your hands very soon. So just diving in here, I click on through. So the goal of this session is to talk about what's new at Validator, particularly with the Validator platform, and then also a little bit talk about what's upcoming at the end. And so big picture within that, the agenda for this session is to highlight the test engine redesign that we think is a game changer for what you're going to be able to do with validator tests in terms of capabilities and structure, as well as hopefully making the learning curve a little bit easier with a simpler UX for getting started. Additionally, we'll talk briefly about two other features that are part of this release, the cross-dataset reporting capabilities. So we'll hit on that. And then we also were trying to really improve the user experience for those of you who use Python with Validator, and giving you more feedback right within Validator for all of that. And then finally, at the end, we will hit on the 2024 roadmap. And then as we're going, please ask questions in the question and answer section, and I will hit on any of those and speak to them, and we can do all that. We're going to be in the deck a little bit, but mostly we're going to be showing examples in the actual tool. So bear with me as I do live demo in front of large audience. So please give me some grace with all of that. Okay, diving right in. Excited for all of this. So again, before we actually dive in, I forgot about this. I just need to say that our Validator dev team is the best ever. I love working with every single one of them, and they have been putting in so much work into this release. I know lots of you guys know Daryl well as kind of the king of that world. He's been pulling late nights, hopefully not losing too much hair and sleep over all of the work that went into this. But I am so thankful for them, and we're really excited for everyone to kind of see the fruits of all their hard work. So let's talk about big picture, what some of our goals were with regards to what we're going to show you with our test engine redesign. So first of all, we wanted to make it easier to create new tests. Currently, there's a pretty high learning curve in Validator that you have to know what the structure of the query that you're going to be bringing back is. You have to know what all the options are. And we wanted it to be easier to just plop in some SQL or some Python and see that data really quickly, and then start defining what the test is on top of that. So that's item number one. Item number two, we wanted all of our tests to be able to be more powerful, more flexible, have a variety of different structures, and that is something that lots and lots of you guys have been giving us as feedback. Third, we wanted everything that we do with the test engine needs to work within our templating model. So, lots of you guys use template tests to auto-generate huge amounts of, individual test cases. And we want anything that any kind of redesign needs to fit within that. And then finally, we really are, focused on not disrupting your current user experience if you, are in your flow, know what you're doing, and so forth. And so to that final point, and this is really important for everything that we're showing, this is not turned on by default. And so within Validator, we have added the capability of turning on or off optional features. And in this particular case, with the engine and the new UI associated with that, that's something that's going to be able to be turned on or off on a project by project basis. So within Validator, as you're organizing your tests, you can turn it on within one project, maybe create a new project where you turn it on to try it out, all of that. Once you do turn on this kind of new user experience with the UI and engine, we do not recommend turning it off for that project. But technically you can, but we do not recommend that, especially if you have started to edit tests with the new capabilities. Turning that off is then not well tested and not recommended. But for those of you who are in Validator Cloud where this release has already gone out to you, again, nothing will change until you turn on this optional feature. For those of you with Validator Server, when you guys upgrade, again, nothing will immediately change until you turn this on for a particular project. And feel free to ask questions about that as we go. We'll hopefully answer those towards the end. So another part of this is that we want to have it you be able to use any query script or script, whether it's SQL or Python, that you've been using in your environment. And we want you to be able to just pick that up and plop it into Validator, not have to worry about, hey, is this one value or is this two columns that are key in value? We want you to be able to just plop anything in that you've been working on elsewhere and say, hey, let's run with that. Now I can kind of work around the edges in Validator. And we don't want you to have to know, again, the data types. Is this going to be returning numeric or string ahead of time, so forth? We want that to be part of Validator, helping you understand, hey, this is what you asked for, and giving you that recommendations. And then finally, we've talked about this for a while now, but there's three fundamental types of comparisons that we do in Validator. Is one data set versus another data set, a data set against some standards or rules, or a data set against previous runs of that same data set or profile. And so breaking down the control side of our tests using kind of that breakdown also just helps users kind of think about, what am I aiming to do here in a new test? So again, those are some ease of use things. We're going to talk about what that looks like in Validator and how that comes about. But then this is the most important thing about what we're doing with our redesign. And this is our most requested feature. Everyone has been asking, hey, I want to have more than just two columns in one test. Historically, we've provided either single value or key value test types. And that limits you either to, again, one value or two columns. This is no longer the case in Validator. You can now have as many columns as you want in one test. You can have multiple ones playing the key role, and you can have multiple ones playing the value role. So you'll see that when we dive in. The second most requested feature that's also part of this redesign is we want to do date and time comparisons. Historically, we have supported string and numeric as our kind of comparison types, data types, but now we also support date time. So these are two huge changes to the basics portion of the engine, and we're really excited about that. And as part of this, with the addition of date time, we have added the concept of automatic data type recognition so that tests can run And you don't have to have known, was that a string or was that numeric? Validator will pick up on what we think the data type was based on the return data, and then do the comparison in that way. Okay, so that was a lot of talking about goals, the actual changes, but now let's actually show some examples. So we have three examples or actually 4 examples I'm gonna show here, but they're all again around the test engine redesign. The first use case is just looking at, hey, I want to bring in a query that has a bunch of columns. It's maybe an aggregated query, and I want to do a source to target comparison. Second one is a little bit more complicated. This is, hey, I want to do a whole table comparison, and I want to define my mappings between a database and maybe a Google Sheet that I'm connecting to. And then the third and fourth ones are around, again, just showing the examples of the types of date time comparisons we can do, and running through that. Okay. And I did see a question here from Brad around whether we are planning to maintain the UI moving forward, the traditional UI moving forward, or are we planning on decommissioning it? For now, we are planning on maintaining both moving forward. Probably most of our new features will all only be added in the new one, but we will definitely maintain that for a good while with the old UI. And all of the test cases and structure work when you transition over the UI. So there shouldn't be any concern with existing tests that you've created or anything like that not working in the new UI. It's just, a different experience. So once you do start setting up a few projects with that, you'll see that pretty quickly. Okay, I'm going to jump out of my deck here. So I just wanted to show this off the top. This is where you can turn on, again, those optional features. You have to be a global admin to turn it on or off for particular projects. But if you come to configuration, optional features, you can see I've turned this on for 2 of my projects within my demo environment, but not for other ones. And if you just start you can select any other project that we have listed out here and turn it on to it. Again, by default, this will be listed as disabled for all of you when you upgrade, and you will not see these UI changes out of the box. Okay, so let me go ahead and show our first test, or our list of tests. So again, we're gonna dive in first here to kind of our multiple keys and values, just showing the basics of that concept. And then we'll show kind of an example around a comparison between Snowflake and a Google Sheet, and then we'll do some data items. So let's pull this up. This is now our new user interface for working with any test in this new environment. And the fundamental change that has happened here is our SQL script can now be any structure that we want. And we do not ask for what is the structure of that as part of kind of the first or second question when we ask what do you want to test. We still link everything to metadata, still have to define a data source, but we do not define the structure up here. Instead, when we execute this SQL script, we can hit this preview and refresh options. And I can go ahead and hit that preview and refresh options. And it's going to execute this query and bring back the structural metadata of the query as it was executed, as well as I can see a preview of those values right here, again, limiting that to 100 rows. As you can see, each column has a role defined for it, and that role can either be key, value, or ignore. And so if it's playing the key role, that means it's going to be used when doing our matching up of 2 data sets as a key column, so something we join on. If it's playing the value role, it's going to be evaluated based on our comparison rule. So some of the times that's going to be, are these values equal? Other times it's going to be, are they within 1%? Or do they match with a pattern of like a regex or something like that? And so what you can see here is all of my measures, in this case, transaction count, tax amount, outstanding balance, I'm treating as values. And all of the customer ID and the month I'm using as keys. And you can see this here listed out. We have some other options as well, where instead of treating the results of this as a table, you can just do a row count on top of any query you provided, or a column aggregation of one particular column. And so those add some additional secondary aggregation or logic on top of a base SQL statement or Python statement. But in this case, we are just going to treat it as a table. Another crucial thing is we always, historically, in the validator, it was always the first column was the key, the second column was the value. And so the position of those is really what determined the roles. Now we need to have some additional logic in here to say, are we using the position or are we using the name of that column to determine the roles, and then also to determine the mapping when we come to it? And so by default, new tests will default this to using name. But all of your existing tests that you were built in the past will transition over with this being position, and it defaulting to position 1 is key, position 2 is value. Okay, now what you can see is, again, just like any other kind of test where we're comparing data sets, we have another SQL statement here against a different data source. Similar query, but slightly different, different table, different functions around converting a date to a month, various things like that. But again, just a query that you're dropping in here. And in this case, when I hit preview and refresh options, it pulls this up, and because we are matching up on name, it will identify that the keys and values are going to be matched up based on name. If I went ahead and pulled my transaction month column, just and moved it down to the bottom, I could hit preview and refresh options here. And this will now have transaction month as the last column, but it is still set as a key while the middle 5 are still the values. And then as we scroll down, we need to set up a mapping, right? Saying, hey, which column matches to which column between the test and control. Because if they're named exactly the same, we can do that out of the box automatically. But if we need to adjust that rule and say, hey, instead of it being called transaction month on one side, it's transaction date. So I could, or I could just say transaction months. Preview this again. You'll notice because the name changed, it now has switched to, hey, I didn't know about this previously, so I'm going to set it to ignore. You can set that back to key. Well, now in our mapping, it's missing, and so I can switch this over to manual and choose to map transaction month to transaction months, and we can do the comparison that way. And so as you can see, there's a lot of new, user interface elements here for mapping up, again, larger, more complex, more diversely structured data sets to each other. But the same rules down here around, hey, I still want to evaluate these numbers against each other with a 1% tolerance, or I'm okay with up to X rows failing. All of that stuff still works the same. So, and feel free to ask questions as you go. I do have the question and answer up on the other screen. So if people are having questions as we go through this, please let me know. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the history of one of these executions and show you what that looks like. It's fine. And so our view of test executions now has to be much more complex, right? And so not only are we having a whole grid where we have a test and a control value for each, we also want to show that aggregated by the column that we're comparing and also by kind of the matching results, right? Did they match, or is it only on the test side? Is it only on the control side? And so forth. And so if I go ahead and pull up, I can go ahead and click on any of these elements and see which records matched between the two sides, but still failed our evaluation result. And so we can see, customer ID in August of 2023 had a transaction count of 268 on one side, but 350 on the other side. So that's a failure. That's a 23% difference. That's not less than our 1% difference that's allowed. And so you can dive into all combinations of this. If you only want to see certain columns here, you can uncheck the columns, and then it will only show, in this case, the transaction count and the customer. All of these are filterable. All of them are sortable. So this is the new results UI that's interactive, dynamic, based on testing, again, multi-column data sets in whatever structure you want. Okay, I'm going to jump into our next example. And just to show this, I'm going to hop to a new screen here. The concept for this example is very similar, but the premise is we have a particular customer, Tailspin Toys, and we have information on their the people from that customer with email addresses and their full names and so forth. And we've been being told by them that, hey, some of the email addresses you guys have for us are wrong. Some of the other phone number information is wrong. And they said they worked with one of our customer service reps, and they said, okay, we'll provide a Google Sheet with updated information that should go, into the application. And we went ahead and tried to process that in, but we're checking, hey, did all of that data from our new Google Sheet come in? And so if you look at the Google Sheet here, this has, 7, 8 columns of information about our customers and their different email addresses and contact info. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, can we check that all of that came through? Now, our application people table has more columns than they provided in their Google Sheet. And so when we queried it, we needed to go through and ignore some of those columns. But some of them still, we did want to do the comparison. So you can see we ran a select star, but then we selected only particular columns as keys and values. And then on the flip side, again, I know many of you guys mostly use SQL. This is just trying to remind everyone, you can execute really simple Python here in Validator. And with our Google Sheets connector, it's as simple as just giving the sheet ID, the sheet name, and then calling this function get data from a Google Sheet. And you don't have to transform it, do anything with it after that, because it's now showing up here with all of those keys and value, or all of those columns that existed in the Google Sheet. Again, you'll notice that we are now, because these ones are not numeric, they're comparing as text values. And out of the box, they just identified, hey, those are text. We should compare them as text. We didn't have to change anything in order for that to flow through automatically. And so just to look at the history here as well, see what it looks like when we're doing text-based comparisons, we see that 380 of our customer records matched perfectly. If we click on the 3 that exist only on the test side, we'll see, okay, these 3 person IDs only exist In our Snowflake, we didn't get updated information for them. And then these 19 had some site, they showed up on both sides. Their names look like they match perfectly, but something about them, either their logon, their phone number, or their email address is now different. And we've highlighted, those differences. So all of this can cover, a variety of different data types, mixtures. In this case, these were all text, but this could be a combination of text and numeric and date fields all within here if you have multiple data types in your variety of columns. If you do have a mixture, then it has to evaluate it with an equals logic. But if you have all numerics, then you can do things like it can be within 1% or some tolerance or things like that. When it's a mixture of data types or when it's text like this, it needs to be that they equal each other. So that covers the fundamentals of the redesign around multiple columns with multiple keys, multiple values, and the result view and how that changes. So the next example, that's again the second most requested feature, is our addition of date and time type of logic. So this time I have a simple query here. This is just saying, hey, get me the max of a date column from my sales order. I just want to see when the latest sales order was edited. And I want to make sure that that is within the last 24 hours. So it's as simple as just writing a single query here. When we hit preview and refresh here, it doesn't bring back a whole grid. It just identifies, hey, that's a single value. We should treat that as a single value. Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. And you didn't have to specify that it was going to be a single value. It just knew because it was a max or a count, it just brings back that. Now, in this case, I want to compare this to a standard, not to another data set. And so I select define standard. I want to compare it to a date value, and that date value is our current time. And then the value success criteria just needs to be, I want this to be within 24 hours of our current time. And so I can just go ahead up here and hit run test. This will go execute the query, compare it to my current time, and we'll see the test value was on the 15th at 12 o'clock. Therefore, it's more than 24 hours prior to our control, which is the timer right now. Similarly, same type of logic works with multi-column logic here. I'm bringing back information from a variety. I think we have different cold rooms, and we're tracking the temperature in each cold room. Hopefully, within the last 48 hours, we have a check in each of our cold rooms. We'll see we have 2 keys and 1 value in this case. And again, we're comparing it to, is this within the last 48 hours? Similar view, except for this time it's going to be a grid view when it comes back, and we have each cold room, did it pass or not? Here's the test value, here's the control value. We'll see that those are within 48 hours of each other. And so with the date capabilities, there is significant work that went into that, dealing with both dates only, dates and times with time zones. Please, try out all these combinations. If you are dealing with complicated rules based on time zone logic and things like that, we tried to accommodate for all of those. And there's a lot of complexity that goes into that, but there's a lot of power in order to create simple tests that reference, the current time, or you can also do, if I went and switch this to like a date range, you could have these be relative date ranges, saying, hey, I want this, up to a certain number of weeks before, and a certain number of hours after current time, various types of things like that. So lots of options in terms of what we can do with dates. Okay, having said that, I'm going to jump back into our deck. Any question, feel free to post questions here in the question and answer. If you have any questions for that, we will also address questions at the end as we go. Perfect. And yeah, let's jump back over here. So just to review, we talked about the multi-column basics. We talked about whole table comparisons where you get to choose which columns you're going to map across. And then we talked about our single and multiple value date type comparisons that we support. The final thing I did want to say here, and I'm not going to show an example of this, but all of this functionality works with template tests. And so if at the end we do have some time, I can show you an example of a template test that is using a multiple column type structure and iterating through your metadata, but still generating well-structured tests for each kind of combination that you would want. And the fundamental thing here is that all of those areas where we were showing kind of the column role grid of whether they're playing the key or the value role, those can be generated from template logic. And we can show that here in a sec. Additionally, with the mapping methods, you can set that up to either use position or name, and therefore the generated queries that you're going to generate with the template will, if they follow a standard process there, they will automatically map together. And again, that can be by position. So even if the names of one side or the other, or the column names are changing, we can still map them by position. So just wanted to remind everyone, hey, that's still fundamentally a key feature of all this testing engine, is that it can be templatized and rolled out in mass, but with multiple columns being brought back. Okay, so these next two features are going to go through a little bit quicker, but did want to just highlight them and show some cool examples. So this one is around our kind of new reporting capabilities, or deepening reporting capabilities, I would say. And the fundamental goal here is we wanted you to be able to link together the different standard data sets that feed your current existing reports within Validatar. And so fundamentally, we have given you a lot of visibility into individual sections of what's going on in Validatar, but we have not, until now, we had not given you, right within Validatar, the ability to link those concepts together in a coherent way. And so what does this do? It lets us answer more complex questions and build more targeted reports and subscriptions that are, for specific users, for specific individuals that can have that more complex logic built into them. So how does that work? The example I'm going to show is showing the concept of, hey, I want to show all of my failed test executions, but only for objects where I have been tagged as the data steward. So it's not tests that failed in a particular job. It's not tests in a project or in a particular folder, but instead tests associated with metadata, which traditionally in our reports was a separate report, right? But tests associated with metadata that's been tagged a particular way. And so this just gives you a lot more kind of nuanced query logic and so forth. And so in order to do that, you have to link the test execution history data with the metadata object properties reports. And that's what I'm going to show you here. Yeah. So if we hit exit and come here, I believe this is it. So this is an example of a report. Again, works, it looks just in terms of the user interface, just like it did before. And you can set up a subscription to it just like you could before. As you can see, it looks like we have a variety of, the base data set for this is the test execution history. However, if we come to our filters and hit edit filters, we will see that we now have two types of filters that are available. So one type is on the fields that exist in that data set, the primary data set, test execution history. So we're looking at things that ran in the last 2 days that failed. But the second type of filter is using a related data set. And so you get to specify, hey, I want to filter on my metadata object properties, and I know that those can be related to my test execution history based on this link, which is what is the primary metadata link that has been saved on the test data set. And so in this case, we want to bring back test executions that are linked to our metadata object properties where we have some additional subfilters in place. And so if we hit the configure subfilters, we can see that there is a subfilter that we're wanting to look at our custom metadata, and we want to look for anything where the metadata object property value contains the word Carlos, which in this case is his username. We could have provided his username or a variety of different things. And that right now we're just checking, does any of the metadata that's been tagged have his name in it? So we hit apply, and we will see that every single one of these tests is associated with an object that he has been tagged probably as the data steward for. And so if I come here and say, let's open up this test name, say yes. Nothing fundamentally on the test itself is about Carlos, but if I link through to this customer address table, we will see, if I come to the metadata and discussion, that Carlos, the data scientist, is our business data steward. And so he would, the test results that are associated with this table are relevant to him. They might not be relevant to other folks, but he now has a report that he can subscribe to that would just have his associated data. So that's the fundamental concept. Again, when it comes to those reports, because we have so many combinations, whether it's the metadata objects, the jobs, the test executions, the properties of those tests and various things, there's a lot of relationships to map out there. And again, if you add a filter, you can then make the check the relationship between, again, the primary data source and maybe it was run by a job and you want to filter on the list of jobs, or check did the same test pass previously and now has failed, or did the same test do this, that, or the other. And so there's a bunch of different kind of combinations of relationships where you can have subfilters, joining logic, so forth. So really, really excited for this to broaden in usage. And then fundamentally, when we talk about the roadmap, we're going to talk about how the reports and the structure that we're building here is going to be able to feed all of our other structures down the line, like KPIs and dashboards that will feed off of this raw data that can have that kind of more complex logic as part of it. So excited for those additional features to come out in subsequent releases here, but this is kind of a foundational piece of relating all the data together. Okay, now let's jump back in and go to our final example. Pop this back up. Okay, so the final thing that we wanted to highlight is how we have improved our Python user experience. And this is, kind of two main goals here. One, making troubleshooting of Python scripts much easier. And then item number two, giving more visibility into particularly files and messages that are being returned by Python. SQL statements don't have as many, sub steps within them. And so we have regularly, not had to deal with that as much. Python can have a lot of logical steps. And we want to be able to identify how far through a script things went, so forth. The example I'm going to show here today is working with the Tableau API, and we are checking if a KPI on the Tableau dashboard matches our expectations. And so in order to do that, we are actually connecting to that dashboard with the API, downloading the image and OCRing that image, capturing the values in a particular section on that image, and seeing whether, hey, is there a disconnect between that and our expectations. So again, I know some of you have seen examples where we use Python to connect to files or kind of some structured stuff. This is actually connecting to something relatively unstructured, like an image, and actually being able to do an OCR on top of that. And in this case, it's Tableau, so it's Tableau. You could pull the raw data potentially, but if there were other tools that didn't expose an API, but you could still get the image of the screen or things like that, this kind of functionality would work for those as well. Okay, so let's show that example. This is the Tableau dashboard that we're doing. It has multiple features on it. Right now, we're just trying to capture one of these KPIs up here in the top left corner. I think we're doing the count of customers. And so what you will see here is that, and I ran this already, so I will show you what it looks like. If we come to data set options, we will see that it ran and it brought back the value 3,233. But additionally here, we now are capturing messages. So every single print statement in a Python script is now going to get returned as a message. So for those of you who are constantly confused as to which step in the process validator got to when running Python, you can now see pretty clearly, okay, it got to this point and we printed out that we exported the image, then we captured the customer count using OCR, then we cleaned up the data types and format. So again, if you add print statements, those are going to now be much more valuable. Additionally, we captured, as we were processing this, we used this statement on line 6 here, which is validator files.add, and then we added an image file with the type of image PNG and a name to our validator files array. And because we did that, validator can now display it right here in the UI. And so this will work for images, and particularly PNG images and so forth, such that we can then preview it. For other files, maybe if it's a CSV file, an Excel file, something else that you want to capture, you can still add it and you will be able to download it. But for this one, if I come to our files list, we can see I could download the file, get the PNG itself, or I can hit this view file and I can then browse it all right in here. And particularly since we do support kind of OCR capabilities with images, we added a little ability to capture a set of coordinates that you want to then OCR. And I can then copy those coordinates out. And that is what we have listed right here as the coordinates for this function call to get a single value from image with coordinates. So again, simple calls like this, the function does it all behind the scenes, but we've captured the image, we've shown it to you, and you can then identify, hey, what section of that do I want to turn into my data frame and get returned as the raw numeric value of 3,233. Um, and then again, the comparison in this case is it should be, it's a numeric range, it's a simple comparison. So, but so, messages and files being able to be added to and shown here as part of scripts is the fundamental thing. And this is true both in the preview here at the test level, but also in the settings area when you're setting up metadata ingestion and so forth. We capture the messages and share them there as well. Okay, so that covers the three main features that we wanted to highlight. Again, the test engine redesign is the biggest thing, but just wanted to highlight those. I'm going to keep on going. Oh yeah, great point. So for all of you guys who are Snowflake customers, all of these changes to the engine particularly, and really all of these changes are also made for you. And so the Snowflake, powered by Snowflake engine can accomplish all of these types of tests as well as obviously the built-in engine that some of our older customers are most used to. And so again, multi-column and multi-key comparisons, those work in Snowflake. Date time comparisons, those work in Snowflake, so forth. Okay, so looking forward now, we have 10 minutes left. We're going to talk a quick section about roadmap, and then please ask any questions in the question and answer section that have been popping up around it. What I'm going to show here, we will not include in the recording that we are going to send out. And so these are forward-looking statements. They are not guarantees of any sort. They're confidential. Please don't necessarily share or make enormous decisions based on this. However, we do want to give you guys an idea of where our head's at, what we're prioritizing as we look to the next year. Okay, I did just want to show, I know I said I didn't need to show this, but the final piece I did want to show was the test engine redesign with regards to template tests. And so, as I mentioned, the template test capability also works with the new design. And the rules around the roles and key and value roles can either be generated based on a dynamic template or can be generated based on a fixed configuration. So if it's fixed, it's expecting the columns to all, and if I can set this by position, this would say position 1 and position 2 from this query should always be the keys. Positions 3 through 7 should always be values, and just you're off and running. If you do it by name, it would be every time there's a customer ID column, it's a key. Transaction month column is a key. So if this was set by name and then your column name was part of your template above, it would break when you materialize for a different column. But in this case, if you set this to position, this would continue to work even if this name got switched out with, the product ID by transaction month or the, sales rep ID by transaction month and so on. Or again, you can switch this to the dynamic version where it's going to actually change what's here based on a template. And you can preview that as, hey, this is what it looks like for customer ID, but here's what it looks like for payment method ID. Okay, so that was just kind of one final outstanding thing that we could do in the last 3 minutes here. But I just wanted to say once again, thank you guys for all of your questions, support, and then again, if you see one of the people on my dev team, please give them a huge congratulations, a round of applause for them. This was an enormous undertaking, and we are really, really, really proud of the work we put together. Additionally, we will be sending out this recording, and for any of you guys, existing customers, please reach out if you want to schedule individual sessions with our customer success team, and we can, dive into additional details there. Thank you guys so much, and have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Cheers.